Please all rise.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here on this wonderful, very sunny day, I can say. But it's nice and cool in here. We are here today to witness the inaugural lecture of Professor Pugatch. And allow me to say a few words about him before he will be given the floor. Since 2013, he holds the chair Intellectual Property Law and Knowledge Management, with particular emphasis on valorization, entrepreneurship, and management of intellectual property. Quite a mouthful, I must say. And you are the first holder of this chair, which is clustered with that of fellow Professor Kamperman Sanders. Professor Pugatch combines this role with his appointment at the University of Haifa in Israel, where he is chair of the Health Systems Administration Division of Management at the School of Public Health. He is known among his peers for his extensive experience with economic and statistical modeling and indexing, valuation of assets, and design of licensing agreements. He serves as a referee and editorial board member for numerous peer-reviewed academic journals, and in addition, he has authored and edited a wide variety of publications. And if I'm correct, the publication list on his CV runs to no fewer than 10 pages, and that in a very small font, I must say. His work is highly international, and his wide-ranging knowledge of North America, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East is frequently praised. As befits a good academic, Professor Pugatch also happily shares his knowledge with his students. To give just one example, he teaches the course Intellectual Property and Entrepreneurship for Scientists, in which he encourages participants to think strategically about the intellectual property rights held by others, as well as intellectual property that they develop themselves in the course of their research. As the CEO of the Pugatch Consilium, he provides strategic advice to international institutions, multinational corporations, and small-medium enterprises from all sectors of the knowledge economy. And the mission of the Pugatch Consilium is to assist clients in their decision-making processes as well as in their day-to-day operational activities by providing them with rigorous, evidence-based economic and policy analysis. It was founded in 2008 and now has already offices in the UK, US, and in Israel. With an international profile like this, it helps that Professor Pugatch is a willing globetrotter, a traveler, who travels all over the world, but his home base is and remains Israel, with his wife and his 3 children, including twins, I was told. And your wife, here present as well, welcome, is a well-known architect. And as if his many academic activities weren't enough, he is also a martial arts enthusiast, and I've been reliably informed by a colleague that you are a true early bird who gets up before dawn each day to spend a few hours training before you go to work. Not to mention the fact that you're also quite an active surfer, which you will not be able to do here, I'm sorry, in Maastricht, but it's a hobby that may have influenced the title of your inaugural lecture, which is IP, Monopolies, and the Sharing Economy, Sink or Swim. We are very proud to have you here as our new colleague, and you just told me that you always bring the sun, so we will keep you to that promise when the fall starts here in the Netherlands. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to you for your inaugural address.
After such introduction, I think that the peak is behind me, right? So, dear Rector Magnificus, esteemed members of the Corona, Dean of the Law Faculty, IPKM colleagues, friends and students, ladies and gentlemen, I am excited and humbled by this opportunity to stand before you in a place which I now consider to be my second home. I have been giving and providing public lectures for the last 18 years, and yet for me, this occasion is utterly special. It is special because of two main reasons. The first is that my wife, the love of my life, is going to see me speak publicly for the first time ever. Now, we've been married for 20 years now, and usually all the speeches that I do at home are requested to be very brief and short, with a final statement, yes, dear, you are right. So in this case, I am going to make an exception. The second reason is that this speech, while publicly available, is very personal to me, because it came at a time and a period in my life in which I was asked personally to reassess my set of beliefs, my ideology, my sense of purpose, as well of let's say, conviction in my own field. And after that period, I have seen and come to experience and to conclude that I do indeed find what I do not only important, but also self-vindicating of my own set of beliefs and purpose. By the end of this personal adventure, I more or less concluded my speech, which I am going to provide now to all of you. So what do I think about IP monopolies and the knowledge economy? Let me begin with the bottom line, because those of you who know me quite well know that I tend to do my lectures in a reverse order. So I would say the following. I believe that IP and monopolies are essential to our progress as a society, and that this is the price of innovation. At the same time, I also believe that as a society, we should ensure that the IP system does not cannibalize itself. And we also need to be clear. We need to have IP, we need to have knowledge monopolies, but we also constantly need to carve their boundaries in order to allow the system to exist. Now, I'm well aware that such statements would raise an eyebrow or two among my colleagues, while some of my, let's say, rival ideological colleagues will also make a face of horror and contempt. But since this is my inaugural, I will take this unique privilege to walk you through my thought process. I hope that by the end of this process, you will not think that I'm a man that just ran away from the asylum of loony academics, but really a man of rather of personal convictions, even if you think they are the wrong ones. Let me start with what I consider to be the essence of debate in the realm of intellectual property. This is important because I came to the conclusion that IP debates, even the most compelling ones, are also based on the wrong set of underlying assumptions. In my field, I submit that the central focus of IP scholarly work in the past and in the present evolves around the eternal quest for securing a benign societal outcome. This quest is based on the assumption that economic, legal, and societal values are ultimately good. I further submit that this is a mistake, because I believe that in order to understand the true nature and importance of the IP system, and in order to use it for the benefit of society, we need to adopt a different set of underlying assumptions. We need to understand that people are greedy. They never settle for one thing. They always want more, and that essentially all of us are thieves. And I will try to make this point why this is actually a good thing, and why by accepting these principles and understanding the true value of intellectual property, we will be able to reward society. Granted, I can see your faces. In order to make this point in a non-loony way, I will have to dive a bit into the old and new IP debates, try to outline their common narrative, and then explain why they were wrong. So, what are the waves of IP debates? If someone from Mars would come here today and look at all those esoteric, quite heated IP debates on all areas around us, including health, innovation, copyrights, art, wines, technology, and so on, he would think that something is very peculiar. Either the system is new and nothing is working, and therefore people are debating it, or it may be a case that something has more than meets the eye in this system. Now, if the same Martian would come and visit, say, Earth in the 17th century and look at the statute of monopolies, he would probably understand that the IP system is quite old, 500, 600 years. So if we are facing the same debates, clearly something has not been solved there. But here it would only be appropriate to acknowledge the founding giants of my field, because without them, and actually based on their work, we are repeating the same arguments to some extent over and over again. In a paper titled The Patent Controversy of the 19th Century, Fritz Macklop and Edith Penrose, two of the most prominent scholars of intellectual property rights, have described some of the most intense debates that took place in the 19th century. They have concluded, in actual fact, the controversy about the patent of invention is very old, and the chief opponents of the system have been among the chief proponents of free enterprise and trade. They further assumed that the controversy was at its height between the 1850s and 1875, and that the opposition demanded that not merely the reform of the patent system, but almost its complete abolition. And there was a time in which they were about to be triumphant. Now, the great patent debate carved the notion, or carved the essence of the narrative of IP in two major concepts: the notion of natural property and the incentive to disclose secrets. These are the two philosophical, ethical, legal aspects that were based in the essence of the patent debate of the great patent debate of the 19th century. The notion of natural property of rights was first manifested in 1791 in France, in which, in conjunction with other legislative developments, we also had a first-time type of linking, philosophical linking of intellectual property with property, by saying that every novel idea whose realization or development can become useful to society belongs primarily to him who conceived it, and that it would be a violation of the rights of men in their very essence if an industrial invention were not regarded as the property of its creator. Henry MacLeod, a true supporter of the patent system at the time, said that the production of a man's minds are now recognized to be as truly as his own property, and the fruits of his industry as the production of material wealth. But naturally, there were strong opponents to the notion of property, and not least those who came from the social progress movement. For example, Ricardo, an advocate of the social progress phenomena, argued that since all nearly useful inventions depend less on any individual than on the progress of society, there is no need for it to be for us as a society to reward him who might be lucky enough to be the first on the thing invented. The Economist, also at the time a true opposer of the patent system, have also argued that if, before the inventors can establish the right of property in their inventions, they ought to give up all knowledge and assistance they have derived from the knowledge and inventions of others. In other words, the debates about is it a property or not a property of the individual was formulated at that time, and we still continue to debate it till that very day. Another dimension that was discussed at the time was the so-called incentive to disclose secrets. And again, proponents of the patent system have articulated this type of phenomena as part of the social contract that derived from the great working of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. The social contract argument was adapted to the patent system by several French economists and philosophers who argued that the patent system constitutes a genuine contract between society and the inventor. And if society grants him temporary guarantee, he disclosed the secrets, which he could have guarded quid pro quo. This is the very essence of equity. Naturally, opponents of that concept have also vigorously argued there is something very wrong in this trade-off. For example, Rogers argued that if the inventor can and choose not to disclose his secret, say like Coca-Cola, then there is something not fair in the equation, because as the inventor you can choose when or when not to disclose your invention, while as a society we'll always have to grant you a patent. So it does conclude that no one can tell that a fair bargain which is voluntary on one side and involuntary on the other side. And once again, these debates and these notions are being repeated and taught in our classes and IPKM classes until that very day. So these were like the big philosophical debates of the 1890s. Now we go into the 1950s. A wave of economists have come to conquer the area, to explain what are the nitty-gritty and the fundamental elements of the economics of patents, trademarks, and copyrights, why these aspects need to be weighted one way or the other, what are the costs, what are the incentives, what are the so-called monopoly areas, what are the innovative areas. But despite all the writings, despite 15 very, very thick reports by well-known economists such as Maclop, Mellman, Palmer, Vernon, all of them essentially did not contribute to the conclusion and debate as to what should be the fate of the patent system. In his concluding remarks in his 80-page report, Maclop apologized before the subcommittee, the US subcommittee of the Congress examining this issue, saying that the statement winding up to the discussion in the preceding sections to look like a disappointingly inconclusive conclusion of a rather lengthy economic review of the patent system. Well, someone say that this is an entire economic, law, that we write a lot of things and then conclude nothing, but one can also argue that on lawyers, right? Other well-known economists, such as Vernon, also considered the lack of sufficient data as one of the most serious problems in the economic study of intellectual property, stating that we plunge into this analysis with one major misgiving. Policy towards international patent systems turns heavily on the appraisal of its economic impact, and much of the data needed in order to consider this impact objectively is lacking or inadequate. Let me assure you that in every conference that we are doing today, in every field of intellectual property, that is the concluding line of every academic. We need more data in order to assess the situation. Nothing has changed. We move into the 1970s very fast. We are facing the North-South divide. And there, in a series of publications, the United Nations Conference of Trade and Development, UNCTAD, representing the bulk of developing countries, vigorously flagged what they think was the destructive effect of IPRs on developing countries. One can recall publications such as The Role of Patent System in the Transfer of Technology to Developing Countries, Major Issues in the Transfer of Technologies to Developing Countries, a case study of pharmaceuticals, The Role of Trademarks in Developing Countries, and so on. All these publications, however, other than condemning the IP system, did not provide a practical alternative. And if you turn to look at the UNCTAD publications today, WHO publications today, UN publications today, you are going to see exactly the same titles, and I dare say even exactly the same text. So is there nothing new under the sun? So back to the future, IP in our current time. I think that if we look at the debates today on intellectual property, I would say that A, they are certainly less intelligent, although they are debated by intelligent people, and seems that the arguments are being based on illogical, almost manic-depressive type of assertions. Let me give you some examples. We hate monopolies, but we love Facebook and Google. We hate corporations that do not allow us to share our data and creation, or their data and creation. But we are absolutely only too happy to provide these corporations with the ability to completely control and abuse our own personal data. We bash innovative pharmaceutical companies for their own drug prices, and at the same time utterly accept other generic companies raising their prices by even 1,000% for drugs that are not being challenged or competed in every other country. We economics at the same time, for example, tend to heavily criticize so-called closed copyright systems that do not allow user access. But again, we are very happy to submit our articles to the most draconic copyright sort of like entities of publishing houses. So which should it be? The list goes on. This is where I come back to some of my earlier assertions. And I'm going to expand a bit why it is a good to be a thief. Because we are not a benign society. We like to accumulate and we don't like to share. We compare ourselves to others and want to best them. We are never satisfied with what we have, and we always want more, which by definition is the basic rule of economics. Such is our society. Gone are the days of Prometheus, stealing the lightning from Zeus in order to share it amongst society, and to allow us all to benefit from the comforting and nurturing power of its fire and warmth. In economic terms, we have come to categorize our behavior today under concepts such as bounded rationality, logic of irrational behavior, Brexit, free riding, logic of collective action, and so on. No, we are a very different society, and we should acknowledge it scientifically and economically. I submit that the IP system is the ultimate expression of the capitalist world, which we chose to worship and to live in. And while I see plenty of my fellow academics, peers trying to limit and curtail or even replace the IP system, I don't see them trying to replace the capitalist system. IP is the ultimate expression of capitalism, since the accumulation of wealth is based on the notion of greed. This is a good thing. Without greed, there is no desire and want. Without desire, there is no sense of wanting more. And wanting more is what drives us forward. We as individuals and as a society always want more. And IP is the way to allow us to get it. It allows us to do so because we do not want to share. We are not Prometheus. We will only share if it is in our best interest. And the privilege and power granted by the IP system allow us to meet this equation. Thus, the old giants got it wrong. The IP system should not be about balancing act between incentives and access. It should be based on the notion that in order to allow ourselves to continue to be lazy and greedy, we allow some selected few to be exceptionally powerful. Thus, the equation is between the power of the selected, innovative, and creative over the mass that we call society. Let me now try to illustrate. Let's take two areas. Health. How many of you, especially the younger generation, are thinking about their health on a daily basis? How many of you are interested in the latest developments, say, myeloma, melanoma, leukemia, lymphoma, Gaucher, Fabry, Parkinson, Alzheimer's, etc.? I would dare say that not many. How many of you will know what are the latest developments and technologies available in these areas? What are their limitations, what progress has been made, and what progress is still to be made? I would dare say not many. Now, how many of you have looked at their mobile phones in the last hour? Well, I hope not in the last hour. Check their profiles, photos, status, messages, emails, etc. I dare say almost all of us. So how come we tend to virtually ignore or cast aside those things that we know are crucial to us, a true matter of life and death, and focus so much more on our personal entertainment and day-to-day dealing? It is because we are lazy. As long as we are healthy, we do not really care about our health. We essentially let others worry about it. It is only when, God forbid, we face these circumstances that we start to get involved, understand the efforts of others, and share their hopes and frustration. It is exactly because of that reason that we need big corporations to be greedy and to have the IP system in order to allow them to do so. Since without them, when a rainy day comes, we will have no umbrella to use, no fire to shelter. In order to continue to be lazy and indulgent, we need monopolies, those hungry power beasts that will take innovation forward. Let us take another area. How many of you have an iPhone? I guess quite a few. Why? Well, because of so many reasons. And still, do you know that Apple is one of the most market-dominant giants? Utterly vicious about using its power and leveraging its proprietary models? And yet there is no societal havoc or cry about the monopolization of data, the lack of choice, and the manner in which Apple's control and dictates its technological progress, or any other big technology company. Funny, we even justify Apple for refusing to break the password of a person suspected in illegal acts, talking about private rights, while at the same time allowing Apple to completely control our own data via the cloud. Why? Because we are lazy. Because we desire the latest version, because it is such a cool product, we are not going to bother ourselves with discussion about monopolistic behavior. So we are willing to give up our independence and to hand it to others. And we do so with IPRs, since without them, we will not be able to bask in the eternal state of bliss, comfort, and intentional ignorance. But let me be clear again. I think it is a good thing. As long as we are that society, then IPRs and monopolies will help us save us from ourselves. Without it, we will sink. With it, we will just swim afloat, happy and ignorant, to the shores of eternal bliss and delight, or so we think in this day of age. Therefore, as a proud member of our society, as a scholar and as an entrepreneur, as an individual and someone who became the subject of its own research, let me live in a world with IP and monopolies, as the alternative is much worse. But let us talk about more so-called benign alternatives. What about other innovation models? Open, hybrid, and so forth. Well, I have named or some have already called me an IP fanatic over the years. And I do have to limit my gospel. So I will try to do so in the following way. Naturally, human innovation will go way after and have existed long before the IP system have been in place. In the past, innovation and monopolies were based on religious and politics, and technological progress was a priori defined as the privilege of the selected few. But this does not mean that innovation today cannot take place without IP. As some of you know, I'm a big fan of wave surfing. My most recent acquisition is the latest Hypto-Crypto surfboard, which made me a very, very happy man. As surfers do know, we are not too big on patents. And still innovation in this area is flourishing, although they tend to be more horizontal, meaning they focus less on R&D efforts and more on innovative matchmaking between different components. But I submit that in order for this innovation to continue and flourish, we need to transform our individual greed into societal greed. And here I would like to thank Professor Kamperman-Sanders for that comments and debate. When I say societal greed, I mean a communal type of consensus for the need to create more, to generate more, but at the same time accepting that both the costs and the rewards would be far less dramatic and individually based. If we agree that all of us can borrow or steal our ideas for the sake of the greater good, this will certainly allow us to enjoy a much more open forms of innovation. But if we can't do so, we will end up expecting and experience a repeated cases in which so many open innovation platforms gradually turn into closed corporate IP-based entities. Either way, IP greed, laziness can take us very far, despite the price of monopoly. Before I will reach the end of my speech, I would like to provide special thanks. I hope I did not bore you too much with my wild thoughts and argumentation. But I cannot conclude this inaugural without thanking a few people and specifically also mention or note their contribution to the person standing in front of you. I would like to start with Professor Kamperman-Sanders, who is really responsible for the privilege and opportunity to stand before you today. I was always proud to call him my colleague, but I'm much prouder to call him my friend. In addition to so many other gifts, Anselm gave me the freedom to be who I am. Even during our most dire professional disagreements, and we do have dire professional disagreements, and debates, Anselm has always been vigilant in respecting my views and allowing me to make them heard. I dare even say that at times, Anselm also realized that having the devil's advocate in his team can be quite useful, and certainly can be a lot of fun, especially when this devil likes to wear his Prada. So, certainly, a big thank you to you, Anselm. To my dear colleagues at the IPKM team, Case, or Cis, as he always likes to be angry at me, Anke, Anna, Dick, and David, with you I truly feel belong, part of a community of colleagues and friends. Together we form a formidable team. To my students, past and present, it is through the work with you and with every one of you and all of you that I manage to learn and grow every year. To my work colleagues, especially Rachel and David, you guys keep me sane, keep me on my toes, and allow me to be where I am today. You are also my own family. To a dear friend Yoav, your support, friendship, and our joint adventures made us grow together from the young brats and idiots we were in the past to the adult idiots we are today, but with so much fun. To my family, Ruthie, Karen, Anna, Danielle, and Naomi, what can I tell you that I did not say 1,000 times before? And you know what I mean. Lastly, I need to acknowledge two people who are no longer with us today. Brian Hindley, the most brilliant scholar I've ever met, who has been my supervisor, my teacher, and later on my friend. Brian has profoundly shaped my knowledge and views about the world in which I deal with. And lastly, and most importantly to me, my father, Elik, who has been my mentor and my best friend, my inspiration, my drive, and my rock. There is not a day that goes by that I don't miss him. I wished you were here. Ik heb geskate. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely wonderful. I can completely understand that your students love your classes, and there are many present here, and that is not often, I must say, with inaugural addresses, that the students all show up. So that says something about your role as a teacher. And I also very much liked your wild thoughts, your calling yourself an adult with crazy ideas. I think that fits perfectly in the culture of Maastricht University. In addition, what I find very fitting here is the fact that you bring your thoughts from so many different disciplines. And that is something that Maastricht is very proud of. That is very part of our identity. So I also wish you lots of fruitful connections with colleagues from other departments, from our medical faculty, from our School of Business and Economics. There are probably already many connections ongoing. So I wish you a very bright future here at Maastricht University. And I'd now like to invite all of you to come to the garden, our beautiful garden, where there will be a reception so that we can all congratulate you with this wonderful achievement. And I would advise you all to follow the cortege. That always works best. Thank you very much, and this academic session is now closed.